It's America's Voice Live with Matt Locke, Tudor Dixon, and Jessica Rivera. America's Voice Live.
Welcome to America's Voice Live. It's Thursday, June 25th, 2020. I'm your host, Jessica Rivera. As always, we've got an exciting 3 hours lined up for you today here on America's Voice Live, so let's get started. Democrats have officially tanked Senate Republicans' police reform bill at a time when Americans have rallied behind calls for police reform. It's Democrats who are choosing to be on the wrong side of history. Tim Scott's new policing bill was blocked by Senate Democrats with a vote of 55 to 45. It would have needed 60 votes to advance, and the reasoning by Democrats is it didn't do enough to quell the demands of protesters. The Republican senator from North Carolina acknowledged the death of George Floyd, saying his murder helped inspire the police reform bill.
The death of yet another African-American man, George Floyd, his murder, is why the country has given us the opportunity to lead. And my friends on the other side just said no. Not no to the legislation. They just said no.
And Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell is vowing to try to pass the bill again before the July 4th recess. He spoke very highly of the bill on the Senate floor.
We're literally arguing about whether to stop arguing, about whether to start arguing about something else. I could stand here for an hour and extol the virtues of Senator Tim Scott's Justice Act. His legislation has already earned 48 co-sponsors because it's a straightforward plan based on facts, based on data, and lived experience.
The bill was even backed by President Trump, who gave his support yesterday at a joint press conference with the president of Poland.
And your reaction to what happened in the Senate?
Well, the Senate Republicans want very much to pass a bill on police reform. We have total cooperation with many different communities, including the police community. They want it very much to happen themselves because there are things that they agree to that they would like to agree to, and they would love to have it agreed to formally. The Democrats don't want to do it because they want to weaken our police. They want to take away immunity. They want to do other things that you know about as well as anybody in this beautiful field that we sit. They want to take away a lot of the strength from our police and from law enforcement generally, and we can't live with that. We can't live with that. This is a great bill. Strongly endorsed by, as you know, Tim Scott, who's terrific, who is a terrific man, great senator, South Carolina. And Mitch wants it to happen. I would like to see it happen, but we won't sacrifice. We won't do that. We won't do anything that's going to hurt our police. The police, we have a record this year on crime, a record positive rating on crime this year, the best. And you hear about certain places like Chicago, and you hear about what's going on in Detroit and other cities, all Democrat run. Every one of them's Democrat run. 20 out of 20. 20 worst, the 20 most dangerous are Democrat run. We have one city or two cities in particular, worse than Honduras, worse than Afghanistan. And these are cities within the United States, Democrat run, radical left run. You see what's going on in Seattle. You see what's going on in other places. Seattle, of all places, who would even think that's possible? 20 out of 20. The Democrats want to weaken very substantially our law enforcement and our police. And frankly, they want to defund largely, at least largely. There are some that want to defund and abolish our police, if you can believe that. And we're not letting that happen. So if nothing happens with it, it's one of those things. We have different philosophies. They want open borders. They want sanctuary cities. We don't. As far as your second question, I think that we're going to have a very strong executive order, but we already have we have the Monuments Act already, which means 10 years in jail. But I think we're going to consolidate various things. We're going to come out with a very strong executive order, and I should have that by the end of the week, which is fast approaching. We're going to have it a very powerful statement. We've arrested numerous people, as you know, for what took place outside of Washington. In addition, the FBI is investigating hundreds of people throughout the country for what they've done to monuments, statues, and even buildings. So we have very strong laws already on the books. I mean, we have a law that's 10 years. It's 10 years. That's a long time to have fun one night. I think many of the people that are knocking down these statues don't even have any idea what the statue is, what it means, who it is. When they knock down Grant, when they want to knock down Grant. But when they look at certain, now they're looking at Jesus Christ. They're looking at George Washington. They're looking at Abraham Lincoln, Thomas Jefferson. Not going to happen. Not going to happen. Not as long as I'm here. As far as Democrats are concerned, I think they could care less whether or not it happens. And I think the American people get it. So we're going to have a very strong executive order, and it'll happen very quickly before the end of the week.
And Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi, on the other hand, was not happy with the bill at all. She went on CBS Radio to justify voting against it.
In other words, for something to happen, they're going to have to face the realities of police brutality, the realities of the need for justice in policing, and the recognition that there are many, many good people in law enforcement, but not all, and that we have to address those concerns. So when they admit that and have some suggestions that are worthy of consideration, but so far they were trying to get away with murder.
And joining us now is former U.S. Congressman and Dean of Liberty University School of Business, Dave Brat. Dave, thank you for joining us today.
You bet. Thanks for having me on.
Okay, so do you believe the Democrats had enough of a reason to shoot this legislation down?
Well, yeah, their reason is they want to hold it as a political issue to win the presidential election. And you just heard what Pelosi said. She accused Republicans of being responsible for the murder that incited all of this. I don't know one person on the planet that doesn't know that was an awful day in our history. And so, I mean, she just said it. And so President Trump before that laid out the case. All the Democratic cities are in the top 20 worst crime cities in the country. They own that. And so, yeah, the reason isn't a good one, but that's the reason they're holding it up for politics. And I think everybody knows that. But, you know, the sad part about American reality is only, 10 or 20% of the American population watch shows like this and are educated about what's going on. And the Democrats know that. So the last thing they want is the Republicans to pass legislation that helps to make the situation better. And the Democrats have shown they're wide open to this chaos. They think it's a winning hand for them, and the American people are going to have to make their mind up on that one.
And Dave, do you think we need police reform, and what would that look like to you?
Yeah, sure. I mean, just some of the items that have been in the news lately on training and making sure we're training to the exact targets that we need and making the expectations known to everyone. But we need a lot of other work, too. I mean, it's just amazing. The kids, the rioters, et cetera, the kids in K-12 education aren't learning anything about their history now. And the kids out there doing the rioting, there are a lot of college kids out there from the Richmond area that are taking down statues, like the president said. Now, Jesus and the stained glass windows in churches, Abraham Lincoln, Mahatma Gandhi. Why are they attacking Mahatma Gandhi? Because he was in favor of nonviolent protest. And he and Martin Luther King and Reinhold Niebuhr, the great Protestant theologian, of course, read each other. And they made huge progress for this country. Martin Luther King thundered it down. He was a PhD in Protestant theology. And he made great progress. He unified conservatives and liberals along the lines that he stated. We're all children of God. We're all made in the image of God. We all need to believe in the dignity of everyone under the law. We all believe that. And so the Democrats don't want to go that route anymore. They need an election item. And so, yeah, you can always improve any process. Any bureaucracy, of course, is bloated. And the Democrat processes appear to be the worst. They got the 20 worst cities.
And Dave, what do you think it's going to take to get this legislation passed?
Well, I don't think the Democrats are ultimately going to let anything happen. You heard McConnell. The one thing that could is the American people, as they learn more and more and more, and the Republicans, it's been crickets. We've had no leadership from the Republican House or the Senate on the riots, et cetera, and the statues. And so the American people need to be educated really what is at stake here, right? The radical groups are now out. There's video clips of the three founders of Black Lives Matter saying they are trained in Marxist theory and ideology. And because no one's been educated in this country, no one knows who Karl Marx was. And they don't know that, most Americans are innocents. They think, do not kill. That's a universal moral kind of ethic and code. It's not. Marx said ethics and religion are the opiate of the masses. They're superstructure. They're not real. The only thing that's real is the material world. And so, there's a little hope that as America gets educated on the Marxist leaders in these groups, and the idea that do not kill is not part of their moral code, they reject all moral codes. They want power. And if that comes across and the left and the moderates in the middle of the Democrat Party understand this, that there's going to be pressure about understanding the world that we live in right now. We're not making we're not talking about Marxism theoretically. The leaders of the riots and the taking down the statues, that's their theory.
Okay, and thank you, Dave, so much for coming on to discuss. I wish we had more time. And stick with us because we have much more coming up after the break.
Pain, swelling, stiffness. When your hands hurt, you can't function. Until now. Introducing the new Copperfit compression gloves with sure grip technology to give you more power, more control, and more agility than ever. Our most advanced copper-infused compression fabric woven into an ultra-lightweight performance glove that fits like a second skin to support relief and recovery of sore muscles and painful joint stiffness. And new Sure Grip bands built in to provide a strong, non-slip grip for more power and control.
You need total control of your hands when you're doing anything with construction. Your hands are your livelihood. The Copperfit gloves are great. The grip is outstanding here with these different ribs. It makes my hand a lot more usable. It just feels like you're just ready to start the job.
The gloves have been a game changer for me. They help with flexibility and pain and soreness. They allow me to do my job even better.
Breathable wicking fabric with an open finger design for full range of motion, feel, and control.
They relieve my pain. When I grab something, I'm not in pain. The support or whatever magic these things do, I don't know what it is. It doesn't matter to me what it is. It works.
I get a lot of pain, and it can make it difficult to do the smallest thing. While I'm wearing this, I do not have any pain. I can use it on the keyboard. I can use my phone. I drive with it. I sleep with it. I love this glove.
The new Copperfit compression gloves with Sure Grip technology. Relief from painful muscle and joint soreness. Guaranteed or your money back. Call 1-800-984-5571 or on the web at getcopperfitgloves.com for only $19.99. Order right now and your shipping is free.
I tried it. I use it. I know it works.
Copperfit gloves definitely just make my life better.
I've used Copperfit before. This has helped my hands so much. These things work.
Feel better with copper-infused compression. Ask for it by name. Copperfit compression gloves.
Jim and Joanne are here to pick up the same prescription. They both know the system is not on their side. They both know drug costs are out of control. But one of them is taking back control with GoodRx.
Next.
So while he's paying that much, even with his insurance, she's paying this much just by using GoodRx. Use GoodRx to compare prices at pharmacies in your area and stop paying too much for your prescriptions. Download the free app today and take back control.
I see what's possible instead of what's here. Others see cracked concrete, broken backboards, run-down courts. I see a way to bring pride back to communities. Art can change it all. Bright colors, a bold vision, and it can be somewhere that brings people together for games or hangouts or whatever. A place that makes people proud, like this is my neighborhood. That's why I made Project Backboard and a site with GoDaddy. How will you make your mark? Make the world you want.
And welcome back to America's Voice Live. Now I'd like to welcome Georgia Dr. Paul Brown. Welcome, Dr. Brown.
Glad to be with you, Jessica. It's always a pleasure to be on y'all's network. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we have Washington State Governor Jay Inslee, who has issued an executive order which is mandating face coverings to be worn at all times. That's indoors, outdoors throughout the state, effective tomorrow. But Lewis County Sheriff Rob Snazza is speaking out against the mandate. And Dr. Brown, I want you to take a listen to what the sheriff has to say.
In case you guys didn't hear, Governor Inslee, in his infinite wisdom, has decided after over 100 and some odd days that we should all wear face masks inside and out. Here's what I say. Don't be a sheep.
Dr. Brown, what are your thoughts?
Well, I think if somebody's coughing and is sick and is going to be out in public, they certainly should wear a face mask, but I don't think the rest of us should be. Jessica, back in November and December, January of last year and first of this year, I was seeing patients that I'm convinced had coronavirus. I call it the Wuhan flu. This has been around for a lot longer than the swamp, the establishment, Dr. Fauci and company all are talking about. And the Democrats all across this country, including Dr. Fauci, are doing all of what they're doing just to try to take President Trump down. In my opinion, I believe very firmly they're part of the swamp. They have done everything that they can to try to kill the economy just to try to take President Trump out. I don't recommend to my patients that aren't sick about wearing the face mask. We have the coronavirus in our communities. There's no question. People are getting the disease. There's no question. It is a bad form of virus. But for the vast majority, I believe it's going to be less. Probably, if the true statistics are known, probably 99% plus of Americans that get the coronavirus are not going to have any life-threatening problems from it. We need to develop what's called herd immunity. And I don't like that term, but that's what the press is referring to it. We've got to develop our own immunities to this virus so that we can protect ourselves. And wearing face masks actually won't do anything but prevent people from getting the immunity that they need. So face masks are not helpful.
Okay, and Dr. Brown, there's also a Stanford professor who says the antibody evidence is showing that the median infection death rate of coronavirus for those under the age of 70 is just 0.04%. What are your thoughts on this claim?
Well, even Dr. Birx has said that the death rate is being way over reported. Frankly, I agree that the death rate is going to be way under 1%. How far under 1%? We'll never know, because you've got people in the CDC, NIH, the FDA that want to destroy Trump in his presidency. And they are inflating the numbers of people who have the disease. I don't think that, in fact, we know that the original tests were not valid, were not good tests. We know that even checking for antibodies are not good tests now. So we'll never know the truth. The truth, though, to me, as a physician, practicing physician, seeing patients, is that this virus is bad, but it's no worse than SARS or the Hong Kong flu or the swine flu. We never shut our economy down for those diseases. We never should have shut the economy down for this one either. What's going on from the swamp is a political agenda to try to destroy the Trump presidency. People need to take care of themselves. People at high risk should protect themselves and should stay away from sick people. Then folks who are working, they should go about their business. We need to open up our economy. President Trump has done a fantastic job, in my opinion, under the circumstances, but he's been forced to listen to people like Dr. Fauci. And Dr. Fauci, I think, is doing everything he can to destroy President Trump. I'd like to see Dr. Fauci go. We need to get rid of the swamp. We need to reduce the size and scope of government, and the governmental employees, the bureaucrats at the CDC and NIH are part of the swamp. They want to continue their fiefdom, and they're trying to destroy a president who's trying to make America great again. So I applaud what President Trump's doing. People need to go about their business. Doctors all over this country are like I am and say it's not the kind of threat that these bureaucrats are trying to make it out to be.
And lastly, Dr. Brown, U.S. National Economic Council Director Larry Kudlow is saying there won't be a second wave of the virus. Take a listen.
There are some hot spots. We're on it. We know how to deal with this stuff now. It's come a long way since last winter. And there is no second wave coming. It's just, hot spots. They send in CDC teams. We've got the testing procedures. We've got the diagnostics. We've got the PPE.
Dr. Brown, do you think this is accurate?
I don't know, and Larry Kudlow doesn't know either. Larry's a great economist, but he's not a physician. We may very well see an uptick in cases because we've got the coronavirus here, Wuhan flu. The Chinese have let this loose on the world, and so it's just like the flu, regular flu, type A and type B strains of the flu. We may see an uptick, but we should not cut the economy to this bones like we've done now. I'll tell you, Dr. Fauci, the swamp, don't care if people losing their businesses, they're losing their homes, they're losing their cars and trucks. They don't care. All they want to do is destroy the Trump presidency. So whether we have a second wave this fall, whether we continue to have the coronavirus over and over again for a number of years, nobody knows except for my Lord Jesus Christ at this point. Only the Father knows. So we just have to treat it medically as it should be and not close the economy down.
And Dr. Brown, really quickly, out of the patients that you are seeing, and I think it's important to talk to doctors who are actually actively seeing patients right now, what are people coming in with? When they do come in with coronavirus, are you seeing that they're needing to be hospitalized, or is this something that's being taken care of where they're able to go home and have some medication and take care of it there?
The vast majority of people that I see just need some symptomatic treatment. They have the worst case, quote unquote, worst case of flu that they've ever had. They stay at home, they get over it, and go back to work. We already know that a number of people that contract coronavirus don't even have symptoms. So if people get sick, they just need to treat it as they normally would the flu or any kind of viral illnesses. And then if they get worse, then they need to see their physician. If they get really bad, then they need to go in the hospital. But the vast majority of people, vast majority of people don't need to go to the hospital. Most people don't even need to go see their doctor. They just need to treat their symptoms symptomatically and get over it.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Brown, for your time today. We'll let you get back to your lunch. And coming up, we'll be joined by the Hollywood conservative Amanda Head. But first, here's a look at your national weather forecast.
Well, good Thursday afternoon to you. I'm meteorologist Rob Bradley with your update from Weather Nation. A chance for severe storms continues to work its way across the north central United States, moving into the Great Lakes on Friday and eventually the Northeast on Saturday. Today, the main severe weather threat focused in across the Dakotas, where we have the potential for isolated tornadoes this afternoon for areas like Fargo, Aberdeen, just outside of Sioux Falls through portions of central and northern Nebraska. Large hail as well as strong wind gusts, the main threat out of these severe storms that should be firing up through the afternoon. slowly drifting east into the late afternoon and evening hours. Strong cold front moving through the north central U.S. is what's going to trigger these storms, running into a warm and moist air mass that has filled up the north central United States and the upper Great Lakes. We're going to see these strong storms push across the I-29 corridor, the Dakotas, Nebraska, also coming off of the mountains of Wyoming, eventually pushing into Nebraska into the late afternoon and evening hours tonight, with slight potential for some of these strong to severe storms to continue overnight across areas of southern Minnesota, perhaps in Minneapolis, into portions of central and western Wisconsin as we head into early Friday. On Friday, the severe weather threat continues to push east across the Great Lakes, including for areas like Chicago, Detroit, up through Green Bay, with an isolated chance for severe storms down to the central plains as well. There's our cold front firing up some strong to severe storms as we head through the early to mid-afternoon hours across Lake Michigan, areas like Chicago over to Detroit, potentially looking at those strong storms firing up as we head through the mid and late afternoon hours. So your commute home could be impacted by storms that could produce damaging wind gusts as well as large hail, and an isolated tornado can't be ruled out. But we're also going to have to follow the severe weather threat into your weekend on Saturday. Areas like Pittsburgh, Scranton, Pennsylvania, over to Boston will have also that threat for some severe storms. Switching gears, heading over to the tropics, we are continuing to track a big plume of Saharan dust that's moving its way across the Atlantic basin. Not expecting tropical development, in part because of that big plume of Saharan dust, which is going to be arriving in portions of the southeast and the mid-Atlantic states over the weekend. There's our big plume of dust. Another one pushing across the Atlantic, heading to the Caribbean, but we have our first plume already arriving in the southeast in the Gulf Coast states. If you're not seeing the rain, you're going to potentially be seeing heavy, hazy skies this weekend, as well as reduced visibility. Folks with sinus issues or respiratory issues may want to limit their time outside because this haze is going to get so thick at times over the weekend, it could potentially impact those respiratory conditions. Areas like Corpus Christi along the Gulf Coast states expected to see the heaviest dust on Friday morning. Central and northern Florida could potentially see that haze in the air as well. As we head into the weekend, some of that dust shifts into the southeast, areas across the Carolinas, and eventually areas across the Midwest may even see some light dust this weekend, making for more colorful sunrises or sunsets, since those dust particles tend to scatter the light waves coming through the atmosphere. That's your update for this Thursday here on Weather Nation. For more information, head to our website anytime, weathernationtv.com.
As the COVID-19 pandemic sweeps the world, we urgently need your help. Our elderly Jewish brothers and sisters who are so precious to God have no access to food, medicine, or to keep themselves safe from the virus. And right now, we must take extraordinary measures during these extraordinary times to fulfill what it says in God's holy scriptures. Comfort ye my people.
Your $25 will help rush an emergency food box filled with life-saving food and germ-fighting supplies to an elderly person in Israel.
This is Shoshana. She's a 97-year-old widow who lives in Jerusalem. She tells us about the day Joseph Mengele sent her parents and grandparents to the gas chambers. Her pain is evident even today. We can't change the past, but we can do something now. Our teams are on the ground delivering emergency aid and food boxes to elderly Jews across Israel.
Your gift of only $25 helps provide a box filled with life-saving food and sanitizing supplies like wipes, gloves, and soap. Each box is delivered to the doorstep of an elderly Jew fighting to stay alive. Please call 1-800-538-1166 or go online today.
I strongly believe that supporting Israel is one of the most meaningful things that a believer can do. It's why I personally approve of and support the life-saving work of the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews.
Go online or call right now. You can be a miracle for an elderly Jew today.
I'm Nick Bolton, and these days...
Hey there.
Hey there. It seems everybody has a pair of tactical sunglasses. Good morning. Morning. But what if you already wear glasses? Then you need these flip-up tack glasses. These new glasses fit right over your existing eyewear to give you all the benefits of our tack glasses while you comfortably wear your regular glasses. Plus, like all tack glasses, flip-up tack glasses feature Bell & Howell light filtering technology that makes invisible objects suddenly become visible. There's just nothing like them on the market today. Here you go, buddy.
Thanks, Nick.
Act now to get your flip-up tack glasses for just $19.99, and we'll even ship them to you free. But wait, order today and you can get a second pair. Just pay a separate fee. Here's how to order.
Call 1-800-284-4127 or go to flipupglasses.com. That's 1-800-284-4127 or order online at flipupglasses.com.
Welcome back to America's Voice Live. I'm Jessica Rivera, and now I'd like to bring in the Hollywood conservative, Amanda Head. Welcome, Amanda.
Hi, Jessica. Thanks for having me.
Okay, so as many brands are undergoing major makeovers due to racial issues, some may look to completely erase the iconic faces of these brands, for example, Aunt Jemima. Now, a little bit of a background, and you may know, using the title Aunt or Uncle is seen as racist because it was a title given to slaves or former slaves because they were not allowed to be referenced by former titles like Mr. or Mrs. So with that being said, Aunt Jemima was the first ever ready mix pancake mix that debuted in 1889. In 1893, former slave Nancy Green was hired to portray the character of Aunt Jemima on the box at the World's Fair. Green was later hired by the company because they loved how she portrayed him at the World's Fair, and she was asked and paid to be the face of Aunt Jemima from there on. By 1915, Aunt Jemima was one of the most famous brands in U.S. history, and now PepsiCo Quaker Oats wants to remove the Aunt Jemima image due to it being deemed racist. But does erasing Nancy Green's legacy as Aunt Jemima help fight racial injustice? One Chicago historian is saying no. And even Green's family says taking her picture off the brand and renaming it will erase their family history. They're very proud of their aunt who made an honest living at a time when it was difficult for black people, let alone a black woman, to be hired to actually be paid for work. To them, their aunt was beautiful, and it's actually an injustice to erase her. So, Amanda, what do you say?
Oh, I have a lot to say about this. Okay, so first of all, I'm so glad you brought up the family member of, I believe, the second or third Aunt Jemima. Her name is Vera Harris, and she has implored them to not erase this history. It's a history that their family is very proud of. And in a statement, she said, "I wish we could take a breath and not just get rid of everything, because good or bad, it is our history. Moving that wipes away a part of me, a part of each of us." I also want to stress, a lot of people don't know, in my past life, up until 2016, I worked in the music industry, and I was a shadow writer for a lot of black artists. And something that I came to realize is that in the black community, they use terms like auntie or auntie, uncle, cousin, brother, sister, very loosely, and I would add incorrectly, erroneously, because when I first started working in that environment, I was the only white person there, and my music manager at the time, who was a British black guy, and he would call everyone his cousin or his brother or his sister, and I'm like, wow, his whole family must have moved here from the UK. And then I came to realize that this is just something that they all use to refer to someone who is just, a friend or even a close friend. So I would charge that if the black community is so incensed over using terms like auntie, aunt, uncle, then maybe they should stop using terms like cousin, brother, sister for people who have absolutely no blood relation. Be the change you want to see.
Absolutely, Amanda. I think there is something to that. And actually, you know what? I call my aunts and uncles aunt and uncle as titles, and I've never been taught that has been a derogatory term, so it's kind of interesting. But the same goes for the Mars Incorporated brand Uncle Ben's. In 1910, Uncle Ben's rice was the first parboiling rice product. It was developed in the United Kingdom. It meant the rice kept its nutrients, took less time to cook, and it wouldn't attract those annoying weevils you get in regular rice, which became a lifesaver for troops in World War II because it was sustainable and they could actually be airdropped to them. Uncle Ben's was introduced to the U.S. in 1943 by Mars after they bought it. And between 1950 until the 1990s, it was the top-selling rice in the U.S. The image on the product is the face of an older black man, an image that is supposed to portray a black rice farmer who takes great pride in his rice and its nutrients. Uncle Ben's is now a top-selling global brand, but Mars Incorporated just announced their plans to change the brand's image by fall with a new name on the horizon. Amanda, your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I'm sensing a pattern here. So you've got Aunt Jemima, who saw many iterations as these ladies, these lovely entrepreneurial ladies, died, and then they would appoint someone else as her successor to be the face of the brand. This was as you stated, the first pancake mix that became hugely famous and popular all across America. With Uncle Ben's, this was a rice product that literally played a major role in contributing to the sustenance of our soldiers in World War II. The pattern that I'm sensing here is you are erasing the faces of revolutionary products here in the United States. And I haven't heard a statement from, I don't know, the man's face who is portrayed on Uncle Ben's. I don't know if that was a fictitious character that they illustrated for the product. But I would imagine that there are a lot of people, especially in older generations in the black communities, who are really not in favor of this, because specifically with respect to Aunt Jemima, you are erasing a legacy. And like she said, good or bad, which I think it's a great legacy. She became one of the original Aunt Jemima, as you stated, in a time when black women were not really employed very widespread. She became a very wealthy woman, and it's something that has been passed through many black families as the matriarchs of their families slid into that role. And I think that the left is looking at this the wrong way. I think that they view it as something that is racist, a symbol or an icon of racism, when in actuality, especially if you talk to these families, you're erasing the history of a legacy.
And Amanda, on that note with Aunt Jemima, they say they make it seem as if she was still enslaved at the time and she was forced to make these appearances. That actually wasn't the truth. She was free. No. She wasn't a slave any longer. She was actually paid very nicely, able to make a living for her children and her family. And like I said, she wasn't a slave and she wasn't forced. And in actuality, she never became a celebrity per se in Hollywood. But when they introduced her at the World's Fair back then, that was a big thing, because then after that, she did such a great job at representing the brand that they decided to hire her permanently to be on there. And she had a say until she passed away as to the brand, what it looked like, her picture, and she was okay with it. And it just seems to me that she was looked at as someone as a celebrity at the time, and for a black woman or a black person at that time, that was very big. And her family was very proud. She was very proud. She held her head up high. And I just think that that is taken away out of it. And I think the context, like you're kind of mentioning, it just seems to be lost. And when it comes to Uncle Ben's rice, the gentleman, from what I'm understanding, it was just an image. But the image was supposed to portray at the time a man who was a black farmer who was free, and he had rice. Rice was his specialty. And they dressed him specifically the way they dressed him because it was more of a distinguished outfit versus, putting him into something where he was a commoner, I guess you could say. So he was in a very distinguished dress. He was Uncle Ben's, but to them, it was to portray that you wanted to buy that specific rice because it was super easy. You still had the nutrients. It was sustainable in your cabinets. And not to mention that it came from somebody who took pride in his rice farm, and he did. So that's the whole, I guess, persona that they wanted to push through with Uncle Ben's. And it's global. I mean, the rice is amazing if you've ever tasted it. I personally really like it. And it's super easy, and it's true. It doesn't get those weevils. And like you said, it actually played a huge role in World War II. Do people know this? I just feel like history has been lost, and they think just if something is bad, it's always bad, instead of thinking, you know, out of a bad situation, good things can happen. I mean, do you think that our history is just being completely lost here?
I think what it boils down to, there's a pun for rice for you there. I think what it boils down to me, is a term I like to use, WMWP, well-meaning white people, taking up the torch for black communities. I think if you took a poll of black communities, I'm going to give them some credit here, because I think that by and large, the majority of those communities don't support the erasure of these types of historical figures and legacies. I think what you have is a lot of well-meaning white people who are taking up the torch for black people and black communities. And to me, that's kind of racist, because you're suggesting that the black community can't stand up for themselves.
Yeah, Amanda, and it's absolutely just, it's mind-boggling to me, and I'll continue to say that because it just doesn't make any sense to me, not to mention we're a capitalist society. So the thing that PepsiCo and Quaker could have done is possibly said, you know what, if it's so offensive to Aunt Jemima, why don't we come to her family and decide that we're going to do a donation or start paying the estate a certain more amount of money versus what they pay, because it's capitalist and they can request that. And to just take her off the box, it seems to erase things to me. It's just not the right decision. And it seems like historians and her family seem that is not the right direction either, Amanda. So I'm going to give it to you and tell us what's coming up after the break.
Yeah, I mean, what you just laid out there is a capitalist mentality versus a Marxist or a communist mentality. It is, the elitist coming in and saying, we're going to wipe this out from your product, rather than saying, okay, well, let's make sure that this is benefiting the right people, and rather than erasing history, let's make this better for all. It's two different mentalities, and unfortunately for those who have that Marxist, communist, socialist mentality, it's very hard to sway them. Anyway, coming up after the break, I've got Scott Chambers on to talk about the CEO and the founder of BET and some comments that he recently made. A couple of them are eyebrow raising, and I don't necessarily agree with them, but a couple of them are pretty spot on. So the Hollywood Conservative segment is coming up next.
The hottest new razor is taking the men's grooming world by storm. And if you don't have it, you need it. Micro Touch Solo, the hyper-advanced full-body razor that trims, shapes, edges, and even shaves with micro precision. And it's totally safe to the touch. Go solo for full body control with one tool. No nicks, bumps, or ingrown hairs. Edge beards and goatees with one touch. Clean your neck, barber shop perfect. And check this out. Snap on the guide to tame growth and perfectly shape your full beard. And keep new growth stubble trimmed exactly to your style. And look, the Solo Full Body Groomer trims precisely the length of hair you want. Snap off the guide and remove unwanted hair anywhere in seconds. What makes Solo different than your ordinary razor? Dual-sided German stainless steel blade. Shave up or down at 200 microstrokes per second. The Ultra Flex pivoting head contours perfectly to you for precise results. 3 custom grooming guides for control of exact length and shape. And a built-in LED light so you never miss a spot. Solo is so precise, you need no creams, no soaps, and no water. Ditch the old man clippers and toss the scissors. You've got to go solo. Call 1-800-709-9777 or go online at microtouchsolo.com and get yours now for only $19.99. Complete with German stainless steel blade, pivoting head, built-in spotlight, and 3 custom grooming guides. Everything you see here for just $19.99. The all-new MicroTouch Solo Full Body Groomer. The one tool that does it all.
From roof to foundation, the damage to your home can be devastating, from clogged gutters, leaking roofs, rotting wood and fascia, and flooded basements. Protect your entire home with Leaf Filter, the nation's #1 rated gutter protection system. Once our ladders go up, you can put yours down forever.
One of the things that I like the most is that I don't have to get back on the ladder anymore.
Leaf Filter starts by cleaning, sealing, and realigning your gutters. We then install our micro mesh screen over your existing gutters, which is guaranteed to filter out everything except for water.
Trying other products is what made us finally go to Leaf Filter.
And Leaf Filter's lifetime transferable warranty makes it an extraordinary value.
Leaf Filter is going to make my home more valuable, especially when I go to sell it.
Call 833-LEAF-FILTER or go to getleaffilter.com for your free gutter inspection and estimate. Call or log on today and save 15%.
Welcome back to America's Voice Live. Today on the Hollywood Conservative segment, I want to bring in my dear friend, talk radio host Scott Chambers. Scott, how are you?
I'm great, Amanda. How are you today?
Good, good, good. All right, let's talk about Robert Johnson. For those of you who don't know, he is the founder of BET. He became America's first black billionaire in 2001. He has been very, very successful, and we've got a clip of him in an interview that he gave. It's raising a few eyebrows, but Scott and I are going to discuss.
Who are basically tearing down statues, trying to make a statement, are basically borderline anarchists, the way I look at it. They really have no agenda other than the idea we're going to topple a statue because what? It's not going to close the wealth gap. It's not going to give a kid whose parents can't afford a college money to go to college. It's not going to close the labor gap between what white workers are paid and what black workers are paid. And it's not going to take people off welfare or food stamps. Look at these white people. They're doing something so important to us. They're taking down a statue of a Civil War general who fought for the South. You know, black people, in my opinion, black people laugh at white people who do this.
All right, Scott, I know you and I are kind of on different sides of this issue. There are a lot of conservatives out there saying, well, you know, especially with respect to the Confederate soldiers, these were people who attempted to secede. These people are treasonous and traitors, and why would we want statues up of them anyway? However, I would look at the other side of it, which is the reason that I think most conservatives want to leave the statues up and the reason that most liberals want to take the statues down is actually the same reason, and that is because it reveals the racist history of the Democrat Party.
See, you and I definitely disagree with that right there. I'm all for history, Amanda. We can't erase history. We can't erase what happened in this country. What happened in the past was absolutely atrocious. Slavery was awful. And if you want to tie every statue to slavery, well, you would be wrong there. And you're certainly not doing that. I'm not doing that. But there are statues all around this country in every city in the South. And people are reminded when they drive by those statues of the awful past that this country had. So do we try to erase the past? No, I don't think we should erase the past. But maybe what's wrong with taking some of these statues, not all, but some of these statues, and maybe placing them in museums where history is meant to be remembered instead of having to drive by it in any town USA?
Well, the problem is because, and we as conservatives get made fun of this a lot, because when you say some, not all, we know that the progressive wing of the Democrat Party is going to run with that, and it's a slippery slope. And folks like Rush Limbaugh and Glenn Beck were talking about this 10 years ago when these types of emotions and sentiment were brewing in America, and they said, you guys watch, one day they're going to be tearing down statues of George Washington. Lo and behold, this week, that is indeed what happened. So, are you not concerned that the left is going to take this too far and just say, okay, fine, no more statues? Because I'm pretty sure that at some point they're going to start tearing down statues of MLK.
Look, here's the thing, and that wouldn't surprise me either if eventually someone started calling for tearing down statues of Martin Luther King, which is absolutely ludicrous that we would ever want to remove a statue of Dr. Martin Luther King. Here's the thing. There are crazy extremists on both sides, on the right and on the left. And I don't side with either one of the crazies on both sides. To see the statues that are being torn down this week, George Washington, people attacking the statue of Abraham Lincoln. I mean, at some point, we've got to stop the insanity. And I think insanity is the key word here. When we're talking about the founder of BET who wants to talk about tearing down statues, it's really hard for me to take him serious when Johnson was talking about $14 trillion in reparations for African Americans. I can't take anything this guy says seriously when he wants to pay out $14 trillion. That's a point right there of a crazy on the other side. And slavery was awful, but paying out $14 trillion, come on.
Yeah, and I tease that in this setup because, this guy, he has actually said a lot in the past that I agree with. He was one of the few black, quote unquote celebrities / businessmen who came out and spoke glowingly about President Trump's economy, not necessarily speaking glowingly about President Trump, but talking about, the economic climate and how it was improving. This was, I believe, 1 or 2 years ago, and he was telling the truth. But that seems to be in direct contrast to this notion that $14 trillion, because here's my thing with reparations. I have a couple issues. The first one being logistics. How on earth are you ever going to determine, you might be able to determine who's a descendant of a slave, but who do you decide pays that out? Because, I have Native American blood in my family. There are a lot of white Americans who have Native American, even black blood in their bloodline. So are those people exempt from paying out to black Americans? And my other problem with this is similar to the basically downfall and fallout that you see from people who win the lottery. If someone is just handed money, I don't think that there is an appreciation for the value of what they are given unless they work for it. And all of this to me kind of goes back to education. $14 trillion really probably wouldn't make a dent, but it's something that needs to go into education, and that is a much larger conversation about school choice. But you have so many public schools in communities like Southside Chicago, Baltimore, the outskirts of Miami, outskirts of Atlanta, outskirts of Birmingham. The list goes on and on, typically liberal-run cities, where the schools are failing these kids. Therefore, they don't make good standardized test scores. They don't have good GPAs. They don't have good extracurricular activities. They don't get into good colleges. They don't graduate with a degree. And therefore, what happens? They fall into a life of poverty.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And here's the problem, not only with reparations, but this is also a problem with tearing down the statues. It doesn't actually fix any problem. It doesn't address the issue at hand, which is stemming from racism in America. Now, paying people money doesn't fix that. Tearing down statues actually doesn't fix that, even though I'm not necessarily against removing statues or certain statues. It doesn't fix people's heart. And until we can actually fix people's hearts and their minds, we're not moving forward in America. That's what it ultimately comes down to.
Yeah, because I'm picturing, my best friend of 13 years, my best friend in the world is a black liberal, actually. And I'm trying to picture his reaction if he was handed a check for $11,000 or $10,000, whatever it is they're proposing. I can't imagine him taking the check and saying, "Oh, thank you. I forgive all of the racists in America."
Yeah, right. It doesn't forgive anything. You're absolutely right. It doesn't forgive anything. We've got to change hearts and minds. And you mentioned a moment ago having Native American ancestry, as do I. Native Americans, are they owed land? Do some of my ancestors, are they going to get plots of land? No, that's ridiculous. I'm not going to ask for that. Who's going to call for that? So I think we've got to fix the problem. We've got to say, this happened in the past. It was bad. I don't support it. No one supports that. Now we've got to change hearts and minds and move forward. And the same can go for statues as well.
Yeah, and speaking of changing hearts and minds, I think that there are people, we have foes in this country who don't necessarily support one side or the other. They actually oppose both sides because they are sowing seeds of dissent and discord and divisiveness in America. And I look at this Bubba Wallace situation with the pull down strap for the garage door and saying that it's a noose. And I'm trying to understand, Scott, so you have probably a dozen people in that garage, all professionally employed as mechanics, as race car drivers, as team owners, people who I think it's safe to say have been around garages and life and race cars most of their life. And you're going to tell me that they actually thought that that was a noose? We have pull down straps in our garage. There are pull down straps on practically every automotive garage, the ones that are, for that type of purpose. If it's just your typical household garage, probably not. But I'm just trying to understand how those people mistook that for a noose.
Well, I'm not even sure that that actually was fashioned in the form of a noose, as in the news stories yesterday. As you mentioned, pull down handles. If a rope breaks, I was a former Boy Scout, you'll want to tie a taut line hitch, which similarly looks like a noose, but is not actually a noose. That's so you can pull on the handle without it crushing in on your hand. So, look, it was coincidentally Bubba Wallace got that garage. I don't think Bubba Wallace had anything to do with this. I think he's come under a lot of flack this week. I've met Bubba Wallace. I've watched him race from an early age when I used to call auto racing. I think he's a great guy. I think NASCAR is to blame on that. And NASCAR, this is a whole other conversation for a different day, but NASCAR is to blame for that whole situation there.
We'll have you on to talk about that another time, hopefully, because I agree. I don't know if Bubba Wallace had anything to do with this, but I do think that his NASCAR team needs to come out and at least apologize for the misunderstanding. Maybe not hoax, but misunderstanding. Jessica, I'm going to throw it back to you in Denver.
Thank you, Amanda. Now let's bring in Tudor Dixon and Matt Locke for a look at what's coming up in the next hour. Matt and Tudor.
Well, I'll tell you what, Tudor, we've got a lot going on in the next hour. Peter Strzok back in the news with handwritten notes and Joe Biden and Logan acts and Joe Biden polls and conservatives and all kinds. Tudor, I'm just specifically glad to be back on air with you.
Oh, we are glad to have you back. But yeah, we have a lot to talk about. We've got Congressman Bill Huizenga coming on the show. Can't wait to talk to him. Also, our own Terrence Williams. We're going to talk about what Nancy Pelosi said about Republicans and Tim Scott's response to that, because it got pretty fiery. And I think that was appropriate for Tim Scott. And it was nice to hear him standing up. We've been talking so much about Republicans not standing up for things lately, but we have one in the Senate. So we are going to get to all of that. Stay tuned. We'll be right back on America's Voice Live.
As the COVID-19 pandemic sweeps the world, we urgently need your help. Our elderly Jewish brothers and sisters who are so precious to God have no access to food, medicine, or to keep themselves safe from the virus.